first presentation. Most people thought I was a complete idiot. I was crazy. I was insane. It was a stupid idea. It's never going to work. I mean, I heard every negative thing, right? And I should have given up, but I had spent 2 years doing primary research. I had already built prototype zero trust environments, and there were some important and powerful organizations and individuals who were encouraging me on the back end, so I kept going. And then, you know what happened? 11 years later, the President of the United States issued this document, the Executive Order on Improving the Nation's Cybersecurity. This is functionally a law in the United States. And what he said in this, President Biden, May 12, 2021, he said the federal government must advance towards a zero trust architecture and accelerate movement to secure cloud services, including software as a service, all these things that we're talking about. There is a mandate inside the U.S. federal government coming from the president on down that says you must do zero trust. Every single U.S. government agency has a zero trust program management office, a zero trust program manager. I spent a lot of time with the U.S. federal government. I was just down before I came to Asia Pacific. I was in Sydney last week, but I was in Huntsville, Alabama. And I can publicly say this because they asked me to tweet it out or send it out on LinkedIn. I was with the Missile Defense Agency. And this is a big-time agency in the U.S. military, and talking to them about zero trust. This is something that is not only about protecting our cyber assets, but our cyber assets all connect to physical assets and all must be protected all at the same time. So, what is zero trust? Now, a lot of people have tried to redefine zero trust based upon the product that they sell. So if you sell multi-factor authentication, zero trust equals multi-factor authentication. If you sell a VPN type of replacement, zero trust equals that. Whatever. I'm going to tell you what the actual definition of zero trust is. Zero trust is a strategy. It's something you do, not something you buy. It is a strategic idea that resonates up to the highest levels of any organization, and yet is tactically implementable by commercially available off-the-shelf technology. I can prove that because it resonated up to the President of the United States, the highest grand strategic actor in the world. And so this strategy does two things. One is it stops data breaches, right? What's a data breach? That's a big question. Because we used to say a breach is when somebody gets into our network and they start looking around. But legal and regulatory entities like GDPR and CCPA and PCI all say that a breach occurs when data that is sensitive or regulated has been exfiltrated, there we go, from our networks and systems into the hands of a malicious actor. It's about what's going outbound, not what's about coming inbound. We spend our entire careers worried about what's coming inbound and not worried about what's going outbound because of a broken trust model. It came from a particular company. And that broken trust model said that anything inside the network was trusted and everything outside the network was untrusted. And I said, no, everything should have the same level of trust, and that's zero, and that's where zero trust comes from. But the other thing zero trust does is it protects other cybersecurity attacks from being successful. I guess my lines got screwed up here in translation. But what we're trying to do here is, there's only two types of attacks in the world. Successful attacks and unsuccessful attacks. Which one do you think is better? Who likes successful attacks in their organization? Anybody? No, you don't. You want them to be unsuccessful. And so we can take an attack and make it unsuccessful. We can't ever stop it from starting because we have to be the attacker. But we can make it unsuccessful. So we're going to do two things. We're going to make data breaches irrelevant. We're going to keep data from going outbound that shouldn't be into the hands of malicious actors. And we're going to make other attacks unsuccessful. And we're going to do that by eliminating trust. And that little circle is supposed to be circling the word trust up there. I don't know what happened. I missed that when we were going through there. So that's the definition of zero trust. Now, from there, let's talk about some of the misconceptions. Just get them out of the way, right? First of all, zero trust means making a system trusted. I am not trying to make a system trusted. I'm trying to eliminate trust from digital systems. Trust is a human emotion. Will you agree with me on that? It's a human emotion. And somehow it got injected into digital systems. I don't know how that happened, and I won't go into that story, but it was arbitrary. There is no such thing as trust in digital systems. These are packets, right? They're zeros and ones as represented by electrons and photons moving across air, copper, or fiber. That's our entire business. Right there in a nutshell. It's that simple. And so why do we have a thing called trust? We shouldn't, right? Trust is about interactions between human beings. Morton Deutsch in 1958 said, trust is the willingness of one person to be vulnerable to another. Think about that. The willingness of one person to be vulnerable to another. Trust is a vulnerability in digital systems. We need to eliminate it. So this is not true. Next, zero trust is all about identity. No. Zero trust consumes identity and policy. If identity equals zero trust, if identity actually worked beyond just being a signal that we can use, then we wouldn't have some of the big events that would happen. In the US, I can talk about the two most famous people in cybersecurity. I call them the Zendaya and the Beyonce of cyber because they're one-word people. Snowden, Manning. You guys heard those names before? They were trust users on trusted systems. They had the right antivirus or anti-malware on their machines. They had robust identity systems and powerful multi-factor authentication. You know what a cat card is, don't you? Or a PIV, right? It's a pain in the neck is what it is. They have really powerful MFA, but nobody looked at their packets post-authentication. Nobody said, hey, Eddie Snowden, why are you setting up all those SSH tunnels? Because nobody cared. Because once you got onto the network, you got access to everything on the network. We give too many people too much access to too many things for no good reason. I was going through the U.S. government's process to get top secret clearance. And finally, I said to the sponsor, I said, do I need to see your data to do this project? And they said, no, absolutely not. And I said, well, then I'm going to withdraw. Well, no one withdraws. Everybody wants a clearance, right? This is like a badge of honor or something. And I said, no, it's a violation of the fundamental first principle of zero trust. Do not give access to data or assets to anybody who doesn't need it to get their job done. So zero trust is not about identity. It consumes identity as one of the signals we use to decide whether we're going to allow somebody to access a resource. And then there are zero trust products, there are not. There are products that work well in zero trust environments based upon what you are protecting. And then finally, zero trust is complicated. That's not true. You're going to see it's really easy. It looks really complicated from the outside. I will tell you, I got a call from the head of CERT, which is the group that tells you what all the vulnerabilities are. General Greg Tuhill, who's a friend of mine, he said, John, I'm reading all this stuff. How come everybody makes it sound so complicated? I said, Greg, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm clueless about it too. He said, well, I guess people think that if they make it sound complicated, they seem smarter. And I said, well, that may be true, Greg. I'm not smart enough to make it complicated. I got to make it simple enough so that I can understand it. Remember, I'm from Nebraska, so I have to dumb it down a little bit. I went to the University of Nebraska, also known as the Harvard of the Plains. That was our joke back in the day. Wasn't really the Harvard of the Plains, but that's okay. It had a much better football team than Harvard University, that's for sure. And it's coming back. Huskers are coming back this year. Yes. So this is what's important. Choose your university based upon the quality of your football team. That's the best advice I can give you, because that's all that will matter 20 years later is who you root for in football. So what does zero trust look like? Well, the best visual metaphor I can give you is how the U.S. Secret Service protects the President of the United States. What we have here is an image of President Barack Obama's 2009 inauguration parade. It was January 20th, 2009, if I remember correctly. And there are three things that the Secret Service knows about the President of the United States that we don't know about data or assets we're protecting. First, they know who the President of the United States is. They don't do presidential discovery projects. They don't scan for the president, do they? No. They know exactly who the president is. Second, they know where the president is at all times. They don't go, hey, John, hey, we lost the president. Have you seen him? It doesn't happen that way. They never lose track of the president. In fact, I think it must be the worst job in the world to be the president or some leader where you're actually going to have somebody go with you to the bathroom. I mean, you're never alone. And third, they know who should have access to the president at any given time. I had this experience with doing something with Vice President Al Gore many years ago. I won't talk about it publicly, but I learned about access control to a dignitary, and it is very strict. And people don't have a sense of humor about that kind of stuff. So these are the three fundamental questions that you must ask when you are protecting anything, whether it is data, assets, or the President of the United States. It doesn't matter. It's exactly the same. So let's look at what's happening here. In this image, you will see that they do have a perimeter. So it almost seems like it defeats my whole hypothesis, except let's look at the uniformed Secret Service agents in the upper right side of that screen. Look at that. He's got his hands in his pockets. He's got a warm hat on. Looks like the coat is zipped up, probably, right? Why? Because it's cold outside. In Washington, D.C. in January, it is cold. They're just trying to stay warm. They're not trying to do any real protection. Right? They're there as what we call security theater. Security theater is the stuff that looks like it's security, but it really isn't, because it just can't actually do the job it's supposed to be doing. Now, the real security is being done at the bottom of the screen at what I call the protect surface. The protect surface is the fundamental tactical concept of zero trust. You must understand a protect surface if you want to understand zero trust. You see, a lot of people talk about managing the attack surface. You can't. It's impossible. Why? Because the attack surface is like the universe. It's constantly expanding. How could you ever manage it? Right? But people are creating products that do that and selling them to you. One tip, don't buy those products. They won't work. So you must understand that the way we solve the problem is we invert the problem. They showed a picture of Warren Buffett recently, just in the last speech Dr. Tu did. But his partner, that he was less well known, who recently died, Charlie Munger, he had a saying: invert, always invert. Take every problem and turn it upside down. Look at it from the other direction, and you'll see the answer. And that's what we're doing in Zero Trust. We've taken the attack surface and we've inverted the problem and shrunk it down orders of magnitude to something that is easily known. This is the protect surface. So on this day, there are only 4 individuals in the protect surface: the president, his wife, and his 2 daughters. If at the end of the day, those 4 people are left alive, the Secret Service has done their job. Something happens to somebody up at the top of the screen there. Oh, that's unfortunate. We'll send flowers to the funeral, right? We'll send a representative from some agency there as a representative of the president. But the job of the Secret Service is not to protect everybody on the street, or everybody in Washington, D.C., or everybody in Maryland, or everybody on the Eastern Seaboard. That's an impossible task. It's to protect 4 people. That's it. That's all that matters to them. And they're very clear to you when you're in a briefing with them about who they're protecting. And if you're around, it's not you. I thought, man, look, I'm very safe. No, I'm not. So by doing this, understanding what they need to protect, they can do something amazing. Watch this. Look at what they're doing. They're moving their controls adjacent to the protect surface, getting them as close as possible to the thing they're protecting. And by doing this, this creates a micro perimeter in policy. So this segments the president and his family away from the rest of Washington, D.C. Now they know what they're protecting. They have the controls in place to enforce that protection and that policy. You see, we don't do that in cybersecurity. In cybersecurity, our controls are on the perimeter or on the endpoint, which is about as far away as we can possibly get them from the thing we're actually trying to protect. And this creates a secondary attack surface that we call the internal network. This is why we have the term dwell time. You guys know the term dwell time? How long has the attacker been in our network? Right? Days, months, weeks, sometimes even years, occasionally decades. Because we didn't know that they were there attacking us. We were oblivious to that. And almost never do we discover our own attacks. Almost never. It's almost always discovered by a third party. So Zero Trust eliminates the concept of dwell time because we have visibility into everything that is either coming in, going out of the protect surface, or trying to come in to the protect surface. It is that complete visibility that eliminates the attacker's ability to have dwell time. We can see them. It is the lack of visibility that gives them an advantage. And Zero Trust takes that visibility away. So everything's about policy in the world of cybersecurity. And there's only two things we can do: allow or deny. Policy is binary. It's all you can do, allow or deny. Right now we allow everything and try to play whack-a-mole. You know that game whack-a-mole, where we try to stop the bad things? I don't know if you've ever played that with your kids. That always frustrated the heck out of me, as a Texan. I just, we just want to, kill them all, right? That's how we do things. But, man, they're always just popping up. You can't get rid of them. In Zero Trust, we have a set of, what we do is we start with a denial. We deny everything, and we just allow good things, the things that are appropriate. So at this moment, there are two individuals who can transit outbound to the protect surface, these two Secret Service agents who are at the front of the beast, the vehicle. The vehicle, by the way, is not the protect surface, it's just transport. Sometimes they're in an airplane, sometimes they're in a helicopter, sometimes they're in a limousine, sometimes they're walking the rope line. Just like traffic is sometimes in a public cloud, sometimes on a wireless network, a wired network, it doesn't matter. The problem is all the same all the time. Transport doesn't affect everything. And then, let's look at this Secret Service agent at the bottom of the screen. He does not have his hands in his pockets. He doesn't even have gloves on. He doesn't have a hat on. Doesn't look like his coat is buttoned up, does it? Doesn't look like that to me. Why? Because he's ready to protect something. That's his job. His job is protection. Usually, I would have a Secret Service pin on my lapel because I do a lot of presentations where the Secret Service is present, and they always say, oh, that's an old pin here, let me give you the new pin. So I have a collection of Secret Service pins. Very popular analogy with the Secret Service. But it is so true, right? This gentleman's job is to protect. His one and only job is to protect. So if someone tries to come in and get access to this, he is going to enforce that deny rule in a pretty powerful way, let's just say. It's not going to be a good day for you if you try to run in from the audience to try to get access to the President of the United States. I've seen someone try to do that to Vice President Gore. Sometimes I feel like to be a Secret Service agent, you have to play linebacker in college football, because they're really good at tackling. So now, the Secret Service doesn't stop there. They continuously monitor and update in real time. They look out into the audience. Oh, there's a guy in white. He looks suspicious. Let's keep an eye out on him. So they're going to tell their controls, keep an eye out on the guy in white. That's like threat intelligence. And then they can also get a message from leadership. Hey, somebody important needs to come in and get access to the President. So they can, again, get a message out to the controls that says, oh, make a dynamic rule change. This is how we make Zero Trust makes everything frictionless. Instead of opening it up all the way so that everybody has access all the time, so that we don't have any friction, we dynamically eliminate the friction based upon the need to know. There's been some big data breaches that you've seen in the past. I won't mention the names of the company, but there was one where there was a big S3 bucket. It was open to everybody. And of course, everybody said, well, it was a misconfiguration issue. That's what you'll always see. But when you look at the legal documents in the lawsuits, you will see that it was actually a deliberate order from leadership of this company to allow everybody who had a domain credential to access this data in order to speed up the development process. We don't want anything impeding it. We don't want any good security practices impeding speed. This is a wrong-headed way to think. So this is a zero trust model of executive protection. This is how you protect anything. Data, assets, President of the United States, it doesn't matter. Now, I was very lucky because for years, I was the only person in the world designing and overseeing the implementation of zero trust environments. And that was such a great gift to me. I wasn't upset that people weren't jumping on the bandwagon. I was thankful because they weren't messing up the bandwagon. And I got to learn how to do it correctly. I got to make all the mistakes, document them, and then tell you about them and define methodologies so you don't have to make the mistakes I did. I made a lot of mistakes, no doubt about it. But I learned from those mistakes, and now I can tell you the exact right way to deploy a zero trust environment in your organization. This is called the 5-step methodology. It's very simple. There's 5 steps, right? Somebody sent me something from another vendor. The 28 steps to your zero trust environment. I'm like, wow, how did they get 28 steps? Like, oh, what is it, right? We used to work for a guy, the CEO of Palo Alto Networks, and when I first came out with this, he said, well, can't you make it 3? And I explained to him why I couldn't make it 3, because he thought anything beyond 3 is too complicated, which was actually a good rule of thumb. But he actually agreed with me. No, there actually are 5 steps. Okay, great, go ahead. And I had to prove to him, right, that I couldn't simplify it anymore because of the way in which the technology worked, right? But you want things to be simple, because simplicity means you can get them done. Complexity means it'll never happen. So what's the first step we're going to do? Well, define the protect surface. We just saw it there. What are we trying to protect? People call me all the time. John, I just bought product X or product Y. What do I do with it? Well, I don't know. I have no idea. What do you mean you don't know? You're supposed to be the expert on zero trust. Well, what are you trying to protect? Well, we haven't thought about that yet. Then you will fail. It's that simple. Because that's how we started in cybersecurity. We bought a product, and then we hoped that it did something valuable to us, for us. We didn't know, right? Because we designed our systems from the outside in instead of the inside out. One of the key principles is we design zero trust from the inside out, to start with the data or assets we're protecting and design outward from that. One of our mutual friends, General John Davis, said to me, a retired 2-star general in the United States Army, he created what became Cyber Command, and he said to me, when I first read that, I fully understood it. That was a mind-opening experience. And he's also the guy who gave me the idea about fighting the cyber war, because one time he put his arm around me and we were walking somewhere, and he said, John, I've already gone out and fought my wars, but you go out and fight yours. Right? That inspires me every single day. I think about General Davis every single day. He went out and fought his wars, kinetic wars, wars with bullets and bombs. We're fighting wars with packets. And we have to have that same level of dedication and self-sacrifice that he did. So what do you put in a protect surface? Well, that's known as a DAS element. And you can read more about this in what's known as the NSTAC report. So I was honored to be appointed by the President to his National Security Telecommunications Advisory Committee, Subcommittee on Zero Trust and Trusted Identity Access. That's another one of those U.S. government names that just, that just rolls off the tongue. The U.S. federal government is great at naming things. But we just call it the NSTAC report. It's on CISA's website, and all this stuff is documented in it. I was a member of the subcommittee, I was a briefer, and I was one of the primary authors of the report that we delivered to President Biden in February of 2022. And so a DAS element is an acronym that stands for data, applications, assets, or services. So we take a single DAS element, we put it into a single protect surface, and we build zero trust out one protect surface at a time. Where people fail is they try to do zero trust all at once. You can't. You will fail. I guarantee you will fail. You have to do it in small, digestible chunks. Right now I'm remodeling my house. I have to do it one room at a time, right? Anybody ever remodel a house? Do anything like that? Yeah, you have, right. So we just finished the bathroom. We didn't do the whole house all at once, because I don't have 800 friends who are willing to come over for a weekend and work on it. No, you do it one room at a time. And this is the same thing you do with zero trust, is you do it one protect surface at a time. So once you understand what you're trying to protect, now you need to understand how that system works together as a system. This is known as mapping the transaction flows. We typically don't understand how our systems work together as systems. And I've seen things completely go down, not because of something that was problematic with zero trust methodology, but by the fact that the people who ran the systems didn't know how the systems work. There are systems where there is nobody at your company who was around when they were built, right? There's a company in Wiley, Texas, out in the middle of nowhere, called the COBOL Cowboys. Isn't that a great name? It's all these old guys who are expert COBOL programmers. And every few months they get a panic call from some big company that some program in COBOL has to be fixed. There's a problem. And there aren't, there's nobody graduating with a degree in COBOL programming. And so they say, yeah, sure, $1 million an hour or whatever it is. I mean, some outrageous money. These guys make so much money. I was trying to get my son to specialize in COBOL programming, because that's where the real money is, folks. COBOL programming. Because there's nobody else who does it. And soon, everybody who ever did it will be dead. Think about that. How are you going to fix those systems? Because they're still going to be running. They're going to be running long after the people who built them are dead. So we need to understand how the system works together as a system in order to do this. And then that will show us how to architect the environment. So we always started with the architecture first. Everybody wants a reference architecture. You can't have it in zero trust. I'll show you something that approximates it, but you can't have an easy button. You can't have a reference architecture. Just put everything here and it'll work. It won't. Reference architectures were the lazy man's way of building networks. And I know, because I was a lazy person building references, using reference architectures that I peeled out of my CCDA book, right? And so that's why zero trust has step 3 being architecture. Because every zero trust environment has to be tailor-made for the protect surface. It can't be generic, right? Just like when they're protecting the president of the United States, it's tailor-made for the president, and it's tailor-made for where the president is. There's no reference architecture for executive protection. And then step 4 is creating policy. Like I said already, everything is about policy. And so zero trust is a set of granular allow rules. We're going to allow people to access a resource based upon their job function. And then finally, we monitor and maintain, where we take all the signals and we re-inject it back into the system to create a system known as an anti-fragile system. This is Nicholas Taleb, the man who wrote Black Swan, also wrote a book called Anti-Fragile. And he gave me the vocabulary to talk about what I have been doing in zero trust, creating an anti-fragile system. In his book, he talks about how there is a difference. We talk about systems being robust, we use the word resilient now, but robust or fragile. A piece of glass is fragile, a rock is robust. I can throw a rock through a piece of glass, the rock will stay all together, it won't break apart, but the glass will break, and that's how we think of the world. But he said, no, there's a third type of system called an anti-fragile system, one that gets stronger and stronger under stress and under load. A great example is your human body. If I go on vacation, I like to go to Hawaii. It's my favorite place in the world. Sorry to Taiwan, but I just like going to Hawaii. Actually, because it's a heck of a lot closer, too, let me tell you. Tomorrow I fly back to the U.S. How many hours is that going to be? With the 5 plus 3, 8 plus 11, 19 hours. And that doesn't include time from the airport. So I'd much rather go to Hawaii. And if I'm laying on the beach, drinking Mai Tais and pina coladas and eating barbecue pig, I'm going to put on a few pounds. That's what I'm going to take home. So what do I have to do? I have to stress my body, don't I? I have to put it under load. I have to restrict calories. I have to work out. I have to run, lift weights, whatever I do. Those things don't break my body down, but they make it stronger and stronger because my body adapts to it. And that's what Zero Trust does. It adapts to the stressors that we have. We want to see those attacks. You show me those attacks and I'll make the system stronger and stronger. And so that's what we're doing. This 5-step, if you follow it, you will be successful. If you try to do it some other way, let's just say success is not guaranteed. So the second report I ever wrote was called Build Security into Network's DNA, the Zero Trust Network Architecture. This was November of 2010, 2 months after the first one. And it tells you why I'm here today. Because my mission is to change the Zero Trust narrative from identity focus to segmentation focus. Because segmentation is a much more important technology for starting my Zero Trust journey than identity. Not that identity isn't important, but it is secondary. So in this report, I said this. I said, new ways of segmenting networks must be created because all future networks must be segmented by default. That's why I came to Illumio. I wrote this 3 years before Illumio was created. But the state of segmentation has been bad. And so the first thing we need to do is segment our environments so that our protect surfaces are segmented away from all the other things that could damage them. You know who agrees with me? The National Security Agency of the United States of America. They wrote an information sheet on this topic where they talked about the importance of the network and environmental pillar, and they called out specific technologies. Data flow mapping, step 2 of Zero Trust, macro segmentation, micro segmentation. These are the 3 things that Illumio focuses on, and then software-defined networking, which we partner with. People who are deep into Zero Trust understand how important segmentation is. Now, Zero Trust defines segmentation. So, what we look at is starting with the protect surface. The only reason to segment a network is to protect it. And so now what we do is we understand why we are segmenting. And then we take a segmentation gateway. A gateway is segmenting networks based upon their DAS elements. That's what Illumio does. That's what Palo Alto did when I was there. The segmentation gateways, we connect them to the protect surface. This shows us that we're protecting our PCI. That's our DAS element. And now we have a micro perimeter, so now we know how we're protecting. And then finally, we add centralized management, and this is the reference architecture for Zero Trust. It works the same way everywhere. On-premise, in public clouds, private clouds, doesn't matter. On endpoints, doesn't matter. And so then we deploy Zero Trust in 3 ways. 1, it becomes incremental. We do it 1 protect surface at a time. 2, it becomes iterative. We do it 1 protect surface after another. And 3, it becomes non-disruptive. The most we can screw up is 1 protect surface. It's that simple. Now, the last time I was in Taiwan, and don't run up and look at this because this happened at my lunch meeting yesterday, I thought it was real time. The president of Taiwan, she kindly woke me up at 2:21 in the morning, very loudly, scared the living you-know-what out of me, to tell me she felt an earthquake, which I thought was very kind, right? Very, very kind. And she told me to keep calm and seek cover nearby. But I was on the 15th floor of a building in Taipei, and I thought, where's the cover? There wasn't any. But I realized that the buildings were designed to withstand the attacks that the earth threw against them. That's what Taipei 101 is all about, right? And so instead of seeking cover, I just crawled back under the covers and went back to sleep. And this highlighted to me in my brain that segmentation is the foundation of zero trust. This is what we need to do, is we need to segment our networks and start there. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here because I want to just show you one last thing about zero trust. I kind of told too many stories there and I ran out of time. This is one of our flow maps at Illumio. This isn't necessarily a commercial about flow map, zero trust, but it's about why the 5-step process works. So over here, you can see here that I have all of the things connected to my production environment, or my headquarters, and here's my production environment. And if I start looking in right here, I see a database. See that right there? That's where my DAS element is for my PCI environment, my point of sale environment, right? That's step one. Because I have visibility, that's step one of zero trust, okay? And now I can then see what else is working in there, that's step two. Because I've got some technology on the system that's giving me that visibility, that's step three. I now am seeing that these connections here are allowed, these are denied, and these are under review. That's step four. And now all I have to do is take all this telemetry sent to my SIM, SOC, SOAR, and that's step five. It's very, very simple to do zero trust. So I just want to leave you with one last thought. I'm going to skip the learning curve here because I misread the time. One back. There we go. So zero trust is the world's only cybersecurity strategy, right? I can prove that by the President of the United States has endorsed it. But this is a man named Jason Chaffetz. He was a sitting U.S. congressman during the OPM data breach. Most people probably here don't know what the OPM data breach is. When I was in Huntsville, but like most places I'll go, how many people got caught up in the OPM data breach? And at least one here, yes, I knew there was going to be one. Knew one hand was going to be raised. Yes, yesterday in both my speeches, no hands. But when I was in Huntsville with the U.S. Air Force, I did it differently. I said, who else didn't get caught up in the OPM data breach? And nobody raised their hands. This was a significant thing. This is the list of all of our spies were stolen by an adversarial nation state. And not only did they get all the personal information, they got their fingerprints, right? Dr. Tu was telling us to don't do this because somebody can see our thumbprint. I think people got our thumbprints already, sir. But even so, what do you do when they steal your thumbprints? Do you call the help desk? Hey, my fingerprints were just compromised. Can you reissue a new set? You can't, right? So this is why you need to do zero trust, because it's strategic. It will resonate up to the highest levels of your organization, but it's implementable using commercially available off-the-shelf technology. You get to choose what that technology is, but it needs to be based upon what you're protecting. Always start with your protect surface. So again, it's always an honor to come here to Taiwan to speak to you. What you're doing here with the semiconductor industry is so important. I had the delight, the pleasure to be with Dr. Kilby, who invented the microprocessor. He won on the day he won the Nobel Prize, and hear the story about the creation of this thing that became this entire industry, right? 1957. This industry goes back only to 1957. So if you think about it, we're very young. We got a long way to go. Who knows what the future is going to hold? But we know that there are bad people who are going to try to attack us. And so you need to fight that cyber war. And I wish you the best of luck, and if I can do anything to help you, please go forth. Thank you.
Thank you again for your very